Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see everyone here. Today we are celebrating World Design Day, and there we have Akshay, who is our moderator, a bit of network trouble himself. We have excellent panelists today amongst ourselves. Architect Geeta Balakrishnan, uh, Architect Rajiv Mishra, and of course Yogi Patidar. Akshay, do you want to go ahead from here, or
Yeah, please give me a minute.
Akshay,
I'm so
can you
sorry
hear
for that.
us?
Yeah, I can. Please give me a minute.
All right, all right. Till then, let me just introduce who we have on the panel today. First of all, we have architect Geeta Balakrishnan. She is an inspiring architect. Currently, she's undertaking a unique mission of walking 100 kilometers in each Indian state and gaining first-hand experience and insight into the diverse architectural landscapes of India. She's a graduate of SPA New Delhi with international training from Carnegie Mellon University and the Indian Institute of Science. Um, Geeta's dedication to corporate social responsibility is evident in her work with NGOs, and that is the reason why she founded Ethos in 2002. Through Ethos and initiatives like ACE Edge, she's empowering the architectural and civil engineering community with crucial knowledge. So, join us as we find out what Geeta has to share from her journey into this journey today. Uh, the next person we have is architect Rajiv Mishra. He is an architect and urban planner in Mumbai. And since 2008, he's been a principal of Sir J.J. College of Architecture. And since 2015, he's also been the director of Directorate of Art, Government of Maharashtra. He's taught me, and he has also taught for 27 years and counting. And he deals with issues dealing with sustainable urbanism, community architecture, technology in building management, classical arts, and education of architects and planners in a constantly changing, evolving society. He has been exploring this field extensively through various research studies, trying to bridge the gap between education and practice. Um, he's also been uh, he was also appointed as the chairman All India Board for Architecture Education AICTE term 2013, and 2016. And well, the list is I think we will let's thank you so much, both uh, architect Geeta and architect Rajiv Mishra, for joining us today. And we also have YP, our beloved YP, who basically is the director of CIVOM. And Akshay, do you want to introduce YP?
Yeah, for sure. So, good afternoon, everyone. Namaste, and welcome to this LinkedIn Live session that we are having as a precursor to the International Design Day that's celebrated on April 27 every year. And we had great introductions of Sir Rajiv Mishra and Geeta Balakrishnan, ma'am, whom we always see shining on Instagram and all other social media platforms for the recent initiative that she has undertaken. And now coming on to Mr. Yogendra Patidar, who serves as the director of CIVOM, and he's an alumni of JNV as well as EDI Ahmedabad. And for the past 12 years, he and his organization CIVOM have committed themselves to the transformation of learning spaces around India and other nations. So, welcome to all the guest panelists we have with us today.
Thank
Welcome,
you.
Yogi sir. Welcome, Rajiv sir. Welcome, Geeta ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Akshay. Yes.
All
So,
right. Thank you so much for having me. And I will be on the other side, watching the live and interacting and engaging with our audience. So have a fruitful discussion and see you soon. Bye.
thank you so much, Yashmi.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Ashmi.
So,
Thank you for inviting us. I think it will be a wonderful time ahead.
for sure, for sure. So today's LinkedIn Live has the theme of the enduring impact of design on learning environments. And who better can be people like Rajiv sir, Geeta ma'am, and Yogi sir to introduce their insights on this topic. So this session is divided into four panels, where first we'll have a foundational principles and then we'll go forward. So let's have the questions for the guest panelists. So first question coming up to Rajiv sir.
Yeah.
So, drawing from your extensive experience at Sir JJ College of Architecture, what are the foundational architectural principles that are crucial when designing effective learning environments? And how has the understanding of these principles evolved over time? All yours.
See, architecture design has to take many factors while being able to design spaces for any function. When it comes to educational spaces, there are certain minimum standards already available, both Indian as well as international. But I think what we should understand as designers of spaces that it should feel good, it should inspire people, and if it is learning spaces, it should inspire learning. So, what is very important for us in terms of founding principles of learning spaces is to be able to understand the context of the audience. Second is to see whether learning is happening in a joyful way. And third is, which is very important, is that it serves the purpose for which it is designed in terms of the subject being taught. Okay? So you can't design a medical school or a primary school or an architecture school or a pharmacy school in a similar way. They have their own dimensions. So design creates values, values create culture, culture creates thinking, thinking creates better learning. So design has a great impact on learning spaces, and if it doesn't match the desire to learn, it provokes people to increase their desire to learn better. So it has a devastating effect of learning in learning spaces that have been designed specifically for learning. And I feel any any space that is not designed well will not find learning enjoyable. I think enjoyable is the word. So every time we look at designing principle, we do not want to be able to do just a building, give a classroom, and then you go and end up learning there. And the last factor, which is very important, is the teacher in these learning spaces. If he does not find this space inspiring enough, it will have an impact on his teaching, right? And therefore, teaching by a teacher under a tree at Shantiniketan was such a pleasure, both for students and the learners. So I think spaces, if handled well by architects and architecture clients, can create wonderful spaces for learning. Yeah? So I will leave at that and continue more as we take more questions.
Thank you for that answer, sir. Thank you for shedding light on the foundational principles for design and the importance of joyful learning as well as joyful teaching from
Yeah.
both aspects and the perspectives of educators as well as learners. And I guess we got a quote of the day in the first answer itself. Design creates value, value creates culture, and culture creates thinking, and thinking creates better learning.
Yeah.
So let's head on to the other. Yes, sir.
I'm so lucky that I teach in a campus called the Sir JJ School of Art campus, which is such a wonderful place to be in. You will feel like learning. You're full of creative energy in the entire campus. So what I did, I came down in the campus so that you could see in the background that I stand in that city where open space is such a problem, but this institution has right open space for learning. And I think that is what is a great thing for any learning space. Huh?
Perfect. Thank you for showing us that view, sir. So, next question coming up for Geeta ma'am is, ma'am, from your ongoing journey of walking 100 kilometers in each Indian state, that provides a unique perspective on the diverse architectural and cultural landscape of India. So, how does this experience inform your understanding of the fundamental principles of designing spaces, particularly learning spaces, to ensure they are both functional as well as inspiring across different contexts?
Yeah, so while this current effort is doing 100 kilometers in every state, I started with a 1700-kilometer walk from Kolkata to Delhi. The journey has been nothing short of transformative in many ways. If you look at learning specifically, what stood out most was how learning thrives beyond just the four walls of a classroom. Just like Rajiv ji just mentioned, whether it's under trees in shaded courtyards, in community spaces along village roads, why even now there are students who join me at different points in a walk to explore, and how it reinforced the idea that the essence of learning is deeply connected to curiosity, context, and human connection. So how should a space uh, kind of be the catalyst for curiosity, context, and needing more than just your classmates, and much more human connection? If I was to just go back and talk about this wonderful girl I met called Sumari on one of my walks in Jharkhand in a village called Namkum, where she's actually from the Oraon tribes. And when I asked her what she wanted to study further after class 12, she told me she wanted to study geography. And she was able to articulate so beautifully on why geography, because she loved the leaves, the trees, the breeze. She even spoke of fossils and space. And I think if obviously the government school that she's in or the NGO that she's living with has done something right for her to have such an aspiration, such a clear articulation of where she was headed in life. So to design meaningfully, we must practice listening, observing, and co-creating, placing people and place at the heart of the process. Timeless design emerges from empathy, contextual sensitivity, and a commitment to inclusivity. And I think empathy and inclusivity are, for me, very key words. How can spaces of all kinds, not just learning environments, be inclusive and kind of welcome everybody? And even for someone like Sumari, will she feel comfortable in all kinds of learning spaces that we have in our country? How can we make spaces that we design accessible, functional, and welcoming for all users? And the joy that Rajivji talks about then becomes the byproduct of all that you do. And I think that's where we should really focus on empathy and inclusivity.
Perfect. So, yeah, we had some very insightful statements coming from this answer that learning has to happen beyond the walls of the classrooms. And then we have to think about making learning spaces inclusive for all, and how timeless design emerges from empathy as well as inclusivity. And that example of Sumri and her love for geography is going to stay forever in our hearts and minds. Thank you for sharing that answer, ma'am. And to Yogi sir, could you please share a quick take on the enduring elements of good design in educational settings?
And I think both of them had rightly pointed out it has to be co-created spaces. I always believe that if you don't put the people in the context and build along with them, at CIVOM a lot of time we do try to get a buy-in mechanism, so that we buy it from the teachers, we buy it from other stakeholders, we buy it from students, and then we try to see what is that they actually looking at. And so once you start looking this kind of co-creation, the results is more phenomenal, because they are the one who's going to use this space. So a lot of time it do happens that we can create a beautiful space by our own sense of empathy also, but at the time also, when we see these users and they try to use it very differently. We had seen a lot of context when we created a product, and we thought of there are three ways to look at it, but a young learner goes inside the campus and try to use it fourth way or fifth way, which we may never thought of it. So when you co-create, those possibilities are really really phenomenal, in today's context, I believe. So I would also say, yes, inclusivity is very key aspect of designing it for the people. And yeah.
And so how can these learning spaces be designed to be adaptable and future proof?
See, if you talk about future proofing, is there's a lot of connection in today's context. Is like when we try to look at, let's say, a college or a university or a higher ed program, we try to see what workspace is demanding today. How the workspace are changing, because when you see that context, today the world is changing from competition to collaboration. there's more interdiscipline rather than getting more focused way. So when you see that part getting inside the design, how our learning force has to have those kind of behaviors. And like sir said, everything is interconnected. Design connects to culture, values and culture. So how you create those cultures in learning force that can be part of the workforces tomorrow. So when you drive those conversation, modularity, flexibility, openness, in all of that senses has to come. It's always like we say that it is when you design this, you have people, places, and practices or programs. All three has to align, and the magic source is the center of that some way. So all three has to go together to get this done.
Thank you. Thank you for highlighting that magical overlap of people, process, and places.
Yes.
And so let's move on to the next question that is in the theme of designing for evolving learning needs. And the question coming up to Geeta ma'am is, ma'am, during your travels across India, you have likely encountered a wide range of educational spaces. So how do you see design thinking methodologies being applied or needing to be applied to create these learning spaces that truly cater to diverse learning styles while promoting engagement, considering the varied cultural and regional context you have observed across India?
Yeah, you spoke of diverse learning styles. You spoke of promoting engagement, and you asked me about the wide range of educational spaces. Whether it is a government school where one teacher is catering to maybe 4 or 5 classes with about 40 to 70 kids in those different classrooms, and managing that beautifully in some cases, and in some cases the children are left to learn on their own. It's very hard to find that one path that kind of caters to these different kinds of problems that exist. And also, when you design a space, you often don't know who the education imparter is going to be and who the receiver is going to be, what kind of backgrounds they come from, and so on. So it's a little difficult. So how can again the design or the learning spaces actually just create that fertile environment for experimentation, for and be that reason for learning to flourish. And my travels have revealed how deeply learning is shaped by context. There is no one size fits all solution. um, this is where design thinking becomes very imperative, with its emphasis on community, on empathy, on iteration, on co creation. Allows us to respond to diverse cultural, climatic, community specific needs that exist across our country. If I was to, it kind of encourages, or we should also encourage people to ask the right questions in schools, and those who are young designers. How do children learn best? What stimulates their curiosity? What makes them feel safe and seen? And I'd like to give one example, which is the Cuckoo Forest School in Tamil Nadu, built using locally sourced materials like adobe and earth mortar. With the help of volunteers and the Maiden Earth team, it reimagines learning spaces not just with conventional infrastructure, but with nature itself as the classroom. The use of local natural materials ensures sustainability and a deep connection to the land. Children climb trees, gather around stones, and learn through exploration. This is design thinking really in action. The environment is not designed for them, it's designed with them. But can this same model be applied or used in a very different context, like a hardcore city? Maybe not. So another example that I can touch on is the Yellow Train School in Coimbatore, which is such a delight to go through. Rooted in Waldorf's education principles, you had various architects like Chitra Vishwanath from Biome and Suhasini Iyer from Auroville, all coming together in different phases, not working together really, but in different phases, bringing out classrooms that are thoughtfully designed with three distinct zones: a traditional teaching area, a group space for group activities, cozy nooks for individual reflection. There is a railway bogie that has been converted into a very cute library and interaction space. So there are various experiments that are being done on how design itself can sow the seeds for children to learn, for nourishing their imagination, their curiosity, and their learning process. I think there's so much that can be done. when you look at designing
So
with
that was like a
context.
360-degree answer where you started from sharing about how teacher-pupil ratio exists in the villages and many regions of India, and many statements came like there is no one size that fits all solution, and the examples of Cuckoo Forest School in Tamil Nadu or be it the Yellow Train School in Coimbatore designed by architect Chitra Vishwanath. And the one thing that came from Cuckoo Forest School is environment is not designed for them, environment is designed with them. And the statements that you made about the learning zones, that reminded me about David Thornburg's an anthropologist who gave the 4 learning zones: campfire, watering hole, cave, and life. So perfect answer. This perfect question.
How fantastic.
So the coming question is based on the theme of the architect's role in shaping educational future. So the question coming up to Rajiv sir is, so what role do you believe architectural education plays in preparing future professionals to design innovative and impactful learning environments? And what are some key skills and perspectives you emphasize with your students? Sir, your voice.
You're on mute, Rajivji.
Sorry, am I okay now?
Yes.
Perfect. Yes.
See, that is a very intelligent question, but you expect a long answer for it. But I tell you, architecture students are taught to design anything that is a challenge in a very simple way for the client, so that he can deliver the user requirement in a very simple way. So I want you to understand that when it comes to learning spaces, for school, for college, for professional college, for specialized place of learning like Indian Institute of Science, Bhabha Atomic Research Center, the entire brief is different. So we believe in 5 things when we teach architecture students. It is the word basic, BASIC. B stands for brief of the client. What is it that the client wants? So if the design brief is correct, right, he will follow it. Otherwise, he'll help the client. The student will help the user design a good brief so that he can deliver them right. The second A, that is basic में जो A है, A is appropriateness, appropriate requirements, and helping the user get it the right way. Okay, it has to be appropriate. Otherwise, the client does not have any idea, or the user does not have idea that there are certain things that he does not need to provide due to changing technology. The entire uncertainty atmosphere today has to be adaptive to changing requirements. You have to be very flexible. So you have to be appropriate to the situation. S, that is the next thing, stands for site. Where is the site? What is the context of the site? What is the location of the site? What is the site of the site? SIGHT of SITE. That's what I'm trying to say. You need to basically tell this to architecture students that you need to follow a path so that the user or the client enjoys interacting with you and gets to learn from you what is good for him. So it is not giving a drawing. It is also being able to participate in his dream fulfillment. If you do that, the clients will love you. They want you to do so much better anything, and you should win the confidence, and then you design with him, because they don't underestimate the client who's paying you fees for designing schools for them, something like this. The innovative ideas come from the word I, basic. B for brief, A for appropriateness, S for site, I for innovative. What is innovative now to the current context? What worked 10 years ago may not work now. But innovative is that not telling children in school that use Google to find out things. No, I think that's bad. Any seed which wants to grow as a tree should not touch Google. There should be a natural growth. They should find out how to grow up in a very, very inclusive way, in a very innovative way. That is innovation. Otherwise, if you give them things that they don't need, you are actually causing disruption. So it's a very serious affair. Getting happiness to people is a very serious matter. And therefore, you in design, most of the time, we should actually be telling students or helping students what not to do while designing. Because otherwise, you can design. You are taught to dream, and you might dream things that should be avoidable sometimes. So basic में brief, appropriateness, site, innovative, and C is the construction technology. World is rapidly changing. You should use sustainable building materials. You should use affordable building material. You should use operation and maintenance in such a way of such a building that it becomes easy for you to use them for a longer duration of time. So I think the word basic is what we teach our architecture students to be able to design anything, whether it is an airport or whether it is a school or whether it is any project. We basically want them to be fertile in their minds, ready for anything, and always be available to find an architectural solution which otherwise seem to be complicated, for many people. So I feel that if you encourage a student that he can change the world through architecture as a tool, the person will do better automatically. It's more or less like that. But here I just wanted to highlight one very important thing. In 1994, there was an international conference of the UIA, Union of International Architects, in Bombay, which dealt with design of educational spaces. The Central Building Research Institute, the Time Saver Standards of the world, had interacted and they created certain standards of spaces for government educational buildings, which dealt with daylight factor, which dealt with climate, which dealt with the size of the classroom, which dealt with pedagogy of teaching. I think the designer or the architecture students ought to know who their client is and what are their requirements, because it affects design. Like I said, that if you do not learn the right brief, you cannot be able to deliver what they actually want. Okay, designing a bad hospital that does not heal patients is, of course, not the fault of architect, and it is also not the fault of doctor. But then giving a bad designed hospital is crime. So that is what we try to emphasize to the designers, that you should give what is not only acceptable but desirable.
So those are kind of like desirable ethics that they can follow, the future professionals, the architects and the designers. So we started with basic, and I would like to repeat the expansion of the basic. B for brief of client, A for appropriateness, that is app requirements for clients, S for site, where is the site and what is the site, SIGHT of the site, and then came I, that is innovative as per the current context, and then came C, that is construction technology, that is sustainable, affordable, and has beauty operations and internet. So thank you for recollecting those memories from 1994 of that international conference of the Union of Architects, and that, of course, we'll search more about it on how educational spaces got standards from there. So coming on to the next question for Geeta ma'am. Ma'am, how can architects and designers collaborate effectively with educators and students to create learning spaces that truly meets their needs and aspirations?
So I like I like the start where you spoke of collaboration and not competition, which is the flavor and which should be the flavor. I think not just in classrooms, but even in the community of architects. How can we actually collaborate in order for general standards of practice with respect to learning spaces or otherwise getting better? Architects need to see themselves not just as space makers, but as listeners and facilitators of dialogue. I love basic. If the architect is involved right from the development of the brief, where you have a say, you have that relationship with the client, where you're able to kind of begin co-creating even the brief. I think the process of creating that space itself will be great. True collaboration. I've been telling many people, especially after the walk, that true collaboration begins with listening. Architects and designers must step into the shoes of the client, the educators, and the students. More in the shoes of possible educators and students. Observe, how they teach, how they learn, how they interact, how they navigate through a space. There is a famous story where Hassan Fatih is supposed to have actually had sand in a courtyard just to study how people use that courtyard by the number of footsteps and the number of, the basic footprint in different parts of that courtyard to understand how and why certain parts of it function better. One example that I'd like to state is while I think learning spaces can be at different levels, at different scales, I'm kind of focusing more on the level of schools because I think that could be looked at the basic foundation as well. There's a learning center at Quest in Chennai designed by my friend Sriram Ganapati from KSM Architecture. And this learning center aims to empower really each child to explore what they love, to uncover new interests, skills, and ultimately discover their best selves. On paper, most of our schools are meant to do this, but very often most of them don't. And this design of this particular school reflects this educational philosophy by creating a series of free-flowing volumes that promote, sight that Rajiv spoke about, visual connectivity and self-discovery. There are elements where the classrooms are arranged around a central atrium. Playful features like a slide from the library to the garden, enhancing engagement. They actually, I'm told, I'm not sure, but I'm told that the slide actually starts from the upper floor level and it comes right down into the garden, enhancing engagement and enjoyment, again, that we spoke about. So the seamless flow between indoor and outdoor, it's a support of a holistic learning experience. And co-designing with them, like I said, rather than for them, leads to spaces that reflect their real needs and aspirations. Design, at best, is a dialogue, and learning spaces must echo the voices of all the stakeholders, all those who inhabit them every day. We recently featured, you talked about Insta, recently featured a school where, Pooja Khairnar, who's the architect from PK Inception, very beautifully, has taken on this school where walls are not just an enclosure, but a playful and interactive canvas where students can draw, learn. So this whole compound wall becomes like a blackboard and curves around, drawing people in, and it's called the community canvas in Nashik, and it's something that I think is should be looked at by those who are designing educational spaces. There are many such that are being designed today, and really happy to see the variety.
Yeah, that was a community canvas school in Savarpada, Nashik, that she has recently been recognized for, right?
That's right. That's right.
So perfect. So we got a statement again that design at best is a dialogue, and we have to engage into co-creation by collaborating and also listening to the briefs. And so the final question of this session of this panel coming up to Yogi sir is, so please discuss on the responsibility and potential of architects as well as designers in influencing educational outcomes through design.
See, before I get this, one thing which we now at least should be appreciable by all of us is that we are not anymore calling these spaces educational spaces. We're calling them learning spaces. That's a shift. That's a change. That's what we
Shift.
that's a big shift. We are recognizing the power of learning, not the education. So there's a beautiful quote by Dr. Ken Robinson. It says, you know. People do not love education. They don't they love learning, but they not enjoy their schools. They don't like to go to schools, because humans, as a nature, we love learning, but we may not enjoy our education at the best because it's been designed in such a way that it is not human way of learning. So what is that human way? So when you talk about this responsibility, or to the designers and people, I always say today we have strong context about how human cognitives are getting developed, how human really learns. So we talk about experience-based learning. Okay, so it's like looking at a recipe book or reading a recipe book and knows that I know the cooking. It would not work. I'm not talking about one context, but in a whole context, it is not going to work. So we really need to understand that this experience-based learning is what makes humans, thinking from hand, heart, mind, all of this, kind of connecting together. So if you have all this connected, then the learning would happen. Okay, emotional-based learning. Because if we look at our hyper emotions, we have these notes getting in our memory stuck for a longer period. So how amygdala functions to the whole context of learning. So think about a pedagogy which can spark emotion and creating experience to have that kind of emotion. So like you're talking about campfire from David Thornburg. So think about a storytelling sessions, through this way. Or maybe we're talking about a tree and sitting in the tree, but look at this hyper emotion which can connect to them. So that would help learn better. Association of memories. Our whole education is designed in packets. One period to another period to another period. But human doesn't think like this. We call it noodle way of thinking, not a pizza way of thinking. So humans bring work in noodle, not pizza. So how our programs are designed in such a way that I don't need to empathize in one room and practice design in another room. All has to go in one sync. It has to be a studio approach. That if I need resources, should I get it there only? Should I get wait for laboratory period to come down and experiment that? Or if I need a book to refer, should I go library and then get it done? Should my books not need to be in the studio itself? So all of this is very very strong context in that sense. Technology in today's context is very relevant. That it's like having an iPhone and charging it with AA batteries, would not work. So if we need a digital mediation, having a Windows XP would not work. You need to have this kind of speed, everything, because you are going to get them to the real world experiences. So how do we make our classrooms a live lab that bring all real world context inside the classroom and connect through those? We talk about architect Gita talking about well-being also. So how this well-being is very important in today's distracted world through technology, social medias, and all of this. So we today, if you look at the reports, 3 out of 10 has suffering one or the other issue with the stress and anxieties. So how does we create those spaces which can help us? So it's like again I would say making or trying to meditate in traffic jams. So how do we create spaces in the learning areas which can give them this zenness or mindfulness, bringing biophilic design like Dr. Architect Raju was explaining about or showing the building the openness. So I would say today's luxury is not aesthetically appeal space, but the space availability, air, what free flowing lights, all of this is what is needed. So from me, it's like all those are key responsibilities from that perspective. Like again, she was talking one shoe size is not filled to all. We have to consider this personalization. The world is going to get into interdiscipline. An architect with a digital awareness can create something beautiful. An architect with water awareness can create something beautiful. So this all of this is interdiscipline. So how do we allow this niches to build for future? And this is where the world is going to move around. So all this technology going to take a lot of clerical work from us, and we need to have more original ideas, more niche ideas to solve these problems differently. So this is where I feel our key responsibilities from my perspective.
Thank you, Yogi sir. Thank you for highlighting the importance of interdisciplinary learning, that is studio approach, and bringing the library and the lab and those racks in the classroom or the learning space, not educational learning space, rather than going to a separate zone to access them, and then the multisensory learning and how it is evolving, and the social emotional learning and how those pedagogy can be aligned with the connections of emotions
So
and of
this
course, the
there's a lot of
point of
research is coming on. Like the recently 2023, there is research from US. I forgot the university. They talked about SCAN, somatic cognitive action network. So how somatic cognitive action network works. So the idea is how human really learns is what a deep research. And if we take the context from there and connect to the idea of design, it will really help us build better experiences for them.
And so even your point of that technology or some gadgets being distraction reminds me of like UK and Australia banning the use of gadgets for the kids in learning spaces until 15 years or 16 years of age. And now let's move on to the Q&A session with the audience. And we have one question coming up for Geeta ma'am. So ma'am, what has been one unexpected lesson from your walk for Arcause when it comes to education and space?
The unexpected lesson and the expected lesson, I'll elaborate on both. One of the unexpected lessons was really, when I visited some of these government schools, And I found them, we usually have such a bad label to many of these schools, and I found them functioning so well. I found a teacher being sensitive to the fact that a child has to come with her 6-month-old or 1-year-old sibling, because if the sibling couldn't come, that meant this girl or this boy couldn't come, and which meant that that child also, the older child also, lost the opportunity to learn. And accommodating that, keeping that little child busy while imparting their regular lessons, I saw some fantastic stories like that. I'd like to focus a little more on the expected lesson as well. We are talking about equity. We are talking about equal opportunities, and here we are talking about designing spaces. And we find that most of these spaces that we're talking about designing end up being for the schools of those that can afford it. So, the divide that one is talking about between the people in the sections that I walked already have this problem of being labeled underprivileged. They already have a barrier of poverty and lack of funds to be able to attend school. And here, even this basic quality of design of space not being accessible to them just because they fall there is increasing that divide so much more. There were so many that I met who said their schools are accessible, in the sense their schools are not accessible. Their schools take in children with disabilities. It's mandatory, right? Many schools have to. But then when I start talking to the students to understand, do you have children with disabilities in your school as classmates? Most cases they don't, because our schools are not designed accessible. And if they're not, then there is going to be a difference in their intellectual abilities, in their skills, because they are not getting access to education that others commonly get access to. So I think very strongly we need to see, and that is why I'm working on this also, how do you make design accessible to places like this that need it? And I think all of us should play a role in making that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was an applause-worthy answer for showing how inclusivity and design for all can be thought upon for while designing learning spaces. So now we have the final theme of this session, that is the broader impact of design on learning, and there will be a common question to all the panelists, and we'll start with Rajiv sir again. Sir, so the common question coming up is, beyond the physical space, how does thoughtful design in its broadest sense influence the overall learning experience and culture within learning spaces, and what are some often overlooked aspects?
See, access to design, accessibility in design has now become a part of learning experience. You have to learn it by, not by choice but by force. You know you should have accessibility issue resolved whenever you design anything. One of the experiments that we do in our school is that we take our first year architecture students to school of design that teaches design. Okay, let us see. So we take them to IDC, Industrial Design Center at IIT Bombay. It's a design school. And we take, after having taken them around the campus and these spaces, we request the HOD and some of the teachers to interact with our students. We also see to it that they attend one of the sessions while they basically deliver instructional design. Okay, so one of the experiments that we carried out that worked very well was take students of architecture, or take anybody who wants to learn the design impact, to a school of design that teaches design. You know, it opens up many minds and it opens up various facets of design. Second thing is that anything which is not designed can cause a problem has to be realized. If you do not design a gate that does not open well, okay, or if it is creating a problem, then you are having an accessibility situation. Okay? So it is not the gate that is a problem. It is the person who has designed the gate that he has not designed it well. So blaming something for the fault of something else has to be understood in design. So design is what works and not only looks good. This is what Steve Jobs said. So one has to realize that design of any object, design of any space is going to cause an impact on people's lives, and therefore they ought to do it well. Okay, this has to be clarified amongst the designers. Now, when it comes to learning, okay, why should we learn? What is so important to learn? It is because it will help you take decisions well to offer or to give the right thing. You can't discuss whether it is right or wrong. You have to give a right thing, and therefore you are a designer. All right, and all design facets or all design applications are interconnected now with artificial intelligence, chat GPT. Softwares are actually being used to design for housewives and for common people who have no access to designers. All right. So we gave one exercise to the students of architecture. How can you use chat GPT and artificial intelligence towards learning of architecture better? You know what they did? They used chat GPT to find out the answer. So you have to learn two things. One is that the generation that you are dealing with is smarter than you, whether you like it or not. Second thing is, which is very important, is they don't want you to give them any information. They are very well informed. They want you to tell them what next, what is better to do under the given circumstances. Okay, we know what it is. So, and the third thing is, you are dealing with different generation. So I know, I don't know whether what I'm trying to say is well conveyed. See, as baby boomers, it is not easy to teach Gen Z. Okay, and he will switch off in 5 minutes if you are not able to tell him what is it that you are here to do. Okay, if you cannot tell them what you can write on a Twitter or an Instagram, you are out. What can you teach? You can't even convey what is it that you wish to say. So today, design teaching is very challenging. Okay, first you have to create a desire in the love of the learner that it is good to learn design, and you will make a big difference in this world if you become a designer. Then good designer. Then how do you become better? Okay? So unless these things go into the minds of the learner, learning spaces will be a big issue. Right? So I have been interacting with a lot of design teachers, and they themselves have different opinion about teaching design. All right. So how to design thinking, how to design teaching should be another course where I think we lack good teachers in design. As a teacher, I'm telling you out of my 30 years of experience. How you deliver design thinking is very important. Otherwise, people stop thinking. Design is later on. First, you have to make them think in the right direction. So my experience as a architecture design teacher needs to begin with interior design, urban design, transport design, interlinking all these design factors, and then letting them know that you are just doing part of it, so do it well. Okay, if you don't do it well, then it will be your problem that you are actually creating for others. So I think today's generation is very, very well informed. Today's generation is very responsible. They are just looking for the right teacher to tell them where to go. And if you are not the right one, they will stop listening to you. So I think we need good design teachers. This is my, and for that we must have good design schools. I'm talking about design schools for creating design teachers. That's my last take.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you for sharing that statement that we have to ignite the desire for design through bringing love and appreciation for learning. And the same question coming up for Geeta ma'am.
So I think I'd like to begin with a quote which is very old, which says, "We shape our buildings and then our buildings shape us." So I think, you know, design has the power to really either invite or isolate. It's an extremely powerful tool, and it can work both ways if we don't use it well. Design influences behavior, mindset, and even self-worth. I believe that when we put a design together, we need to. You talked about flexibility a little while ago. I think you need to have space for it to dynamically change and adapt. You talked about future, adapt and include future requirements also. In some of the schools that I visited during my journey, especially in small isolated villages, tiny interventions like natural light, color, or even a welcoming threshold make the visible difference to how students engage with learning. We were talking about how students remember learning but don't remember education. And how can a space play a role uh, in making those students come to school every day and not think of it as a troublesome daily activity that they have to go through. What's often overlooked when we design are the soft aspects of how acoustics, wayfinding, access to nature, how seating arrangements encourage dialogue. What is the role of emotional comfort, dignity, and inclusivity in this whole scheme of things? Thoughtful design goes beyond just aesthetics or infrastructure. It quietly has the power to shape how people behave, feel, and connect within that learning environment. How they uh, uh, from our stories we know that there are students who kind of get left isolated, like I said, and get included in this whole conversation, and design has that power to make those things happen. When design considers light, movement, materials, it tells students and other users of the space that they actually matter. The students there matter. It can build a sense of belonging, a sense of safety, and even curiosity. Something as tiny as a bench under a tree or a ramp that doesn't feel like an afterthought. Very often we build, now they're supposed to actually retrofit our buildings to include to be accessible. So if a ramp that doesn't feel like an afterthought can actually make someone feel seen, and how that ramp and where it is placed can actually determine whether that person actually feels like he or she is part of the entire environment. Um, we realize how much learning can be lost, like I just mentioned a little while ago, when a space unintentionally, doesn't even have to be intentionally, unintentionally excludes. And hence, we need to be more intentionally aware and conscious of our decisions. An often overlooked aspect is emotional accessibility, spaces that allow for pause, for play, for silence. I think it should be not for just one type of a user, but for all. Good design eventually should be invisible, not because it's not doing anything, but because it's doing everything quietly and intuitively. Let's stop with that.
So finally, for the first time, we had someone on our LinkedIn Live who talked beyond thermal comfort and who gave importance to the emotional comfort for learners while they are in those learning spaces. So, Yogi sir, coming on to the same question, sir, what's your take on this?
No, so thoughtful design is again most of the aspects is covered, but I always say this way that there is so much we really need to understand from like Dr. Architect Gita said, intentionalness of the whole thing. When a school owner or a university owner want to start it, why he's wanted to do it? What is that end game around it? Because the moment you start thinking about commerce into this, the whole idea starts cutting down to something else. So that intent of adults has to be seen. That teacher quality, selection, everything would be dependent upon this. So it's like when you want to set a culture, you need to have right vision. If vision is failed, the culture would not come, the values would not come the way we want it, and the design would not eventually come in the way. So you will have a compromise around it. So a lot of time when we were doing projects, I feel uh, the dissection between school or institute versus education versus learning has to be clearly seen by people who are taking decisions, because it is we as an part of community and school owners who's taking decisions for the users. This is the only case where users cannot be decision makers. They were supposed to be in the building, be in these spaces where have not taken the decisions, that someone else is taking for them. So we have a bigger responsibility. If I'm doing my office or house, someone, I can do it for myself, but here we have a bigger responsibility in that sense. So that intent of the vision is what defines a lot of things in here. So if you're designing it for learning, designing it for making your future generation ready, the whole aspect, belief, it is with the governments also. If we're talking about public schools, they had to think about what they want next generations to do. Okay, how that schools at the rural areas or institutes at the rural areas has to kind of shape into. So getting something which is like a mass model would not work. This is the whole part, that it is not product making, it is human making. And human making would take a different intervention at all levels of equity, equalities, and personalizations that need to be addressed deeply. So intentionality is very key aspect of the whole design. Learning from a lot of other aspects, like we were talking about visual merchandise the other day, that if you go to malls, they attract a lot of young generation. What is that they're doing in the part of design that can be brought into this? So how do you visually merchandise books, content, themes, you know in our buildings, because we have to have provisions for all of that also. So taking a lot of analogies from what this Gen Z's or Gen X, Gen Y's are trying to look at. So I don't know, so we have kind of worked around four key attributes of future of workforces, and we figured out they are teamers, they are doers, they are flexers, and they are purpose seekers. If they don't see a purpose, like architect Raju was mentioning, they don't connect. They're highly purpose driven. They always need to know why they are doing this. If you don't find relevant why, they would get away from there. So they're purpose seekers. Today's
Yes.
organization had to build on purposes. If you want to attract talents, if you don't have purpose, talented people would not come to you. So this is what how much they work on this is maybe different idea, but yeah, they look for purpose. They're purpose seekers. Okay, they're doers. They don't think much like the older generation. So like Tata ji was mentioning about, I had to be supervisor in my factory for 3 years to get things. So today's generation don't wait. They prototype quickly. They have resources. They have connections. So they're doers. They work in teams because they know their niche is their strength. Okay, so we were
Yeah.
talking about, and I'll take a bit of it. Talking about future of work, and one of the idea which came is how world is going to be people light models rather than asset light models. That's beautiful thinking which is going to come. So it's like movie making. We make a movie where we may all the team may not work in the second movie. So it's like selecting people for so you have a higher team one time one day and lower team another day. Okay, so you get the people with the skills in that project, finish it up, and move forward. So you only have 5, 6 people in the studio permanently, and you only bring the people with their niches and work this through, and then get away with this. And they would work with some other project. So this is how world is going to move. So if world is going to be this people like models, what kind of skills, what kind of niches they really need to build around themselves. So they work in teams. They are designed for the teams. So that intention into these spaces has to be worked to work in that collaboration rather than competition. We had to get away with the idea of this coachings which we are doing. That 3 years of our young brains are going or draining into the coaching ideas, because think about Sweden's model, which says in 11, 12 they give them the idea of whatever they want to experience can be done in the industries. So in schools they have on-job trainings. So you really wanted to be engineer, this kind of engineer, you practice that first. And if you really connect, then go for that engineering. So instead of wasting that 3 years and figuring out that electrical engineering is not right for me, you're dying your young brains. So how do we take shift from that to real connections? Even today's electrical engineers cannot figure out what is phase or neutrals. So what is the whole point of having that kind of engineering? So how do you really connect them to their passion and gift and build around it? So I think that intention is very important to contextualize the learning spaces. And one thing which we really need not to, or which doesn't work around is, I feel, awareness to people who's trying to do it. So if someone is getting into education or learning, they really need to know that that's not a business. That's also a strong service. You're dealing with human development, so they need to get a strong awareness about what they want, why they want. Okay, and the brief would come from there, because there's strong awareness needed in brief development. When we go, and so a lot of time people approaches designers or architects in the last do. India is like we want it yesterday. You don't have that much time to get through. So everyone has to be prepared for that, is what my belief. So we can have a right brief. A brief would not work in today's. If you want to create a hostel, that we want hostel for 400 kids, and that's it. This much space is available. We have to go in a deeper context, that which generation, what activities. It has to go to a deeper level. So, yeah.
So, to all the Gen Z listeners who have joined this LinkedIn Live, you have found two heroes today, Yogi sir and Rajiv sir, who voiced the opinions and the needs of Gen Z learners. And so, it's time to wrap up this session and to close this. From starting with the example of Shanti Niketan and how benches and how students learned uh, below the trees. That was shared by Rajiv sir, to the examples shared by Geeta ma'am from her journey of taking that 100 kilometers across all the states of India, and to the importance of multisensory learning and the pedagogies that should evolve along with spaces shared by Yogi sir. This session turned out to be a wonderful one for all the listeners joining us from all around the world, and this was a perfect tribute to International Design Day. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to Rajiv sir. Thank you to Yogi sir. Thank you to Geeta ma'am. It was an honor to have you with us. Thank you to Team CIVOM, and let's have this session closed now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.